Awesome. Welcome to Coachable. I'm your host, Coach Kev, sitting with my man, Andrew Coates from North of the Wall or America's Hat, however you want to look at it. But Andrew Coates is from our neighbor to the north. And welcome to the show, Andrew. How are you today?
Um, I'm not bad, as we discussed. My dad's in the hospital right now, a little bit of a health scare. He's okay. So, that sort of thing weighs a little heavy on you. But yes, I'm from the Great Frozen North, this gigantic landmass, but I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, so it's on the western end of things. I love how I love my American friends because I find that they'll be like, "Oh, I'm gonna be in Canada," and I'm like, "Oh, where are you going?" Toronto, and they're like, "Is that near you?" I'm like, "That's a 4-hour flight from where I am." So it's like, no.
Yeah. Geography and the provinces. I don't know that the provinces were brought up much in my geography, and yeah, I don't think they were. But despite that's a good place to start. Despite geographical limitations, you have transcended the fitness industry uh, internationally, nationally. You have friends everywhere. How come Andrew Coates is friends with everybody? And in a world where you can be polarizing, how do you maintain such positivity, such a bright light?
Mm.
And how are you friends with so many people?
I kept showing up to things, literally or metaphorically. I started traveling to fitness conferences like the Kansas City Fitness Summit in 2017. I, along the way, have consumed podcasts and articles and media from a lot of the people I consider to be industry leaders. Some of whom have kind of like moved away from the space, but some of whom are just continuing to be present and skyrocketing. Along the way, just by being present at so many events and investing in the travel, I managed to meet a lot of those people. A lot of those people have become good friends. I've had my own podcast for over 6 years, which, as you know, is a wonderful vehicle to support and showcase other people. And here's the crazy thing. When you actually make it about someone else and you create opportunities, I've been sharing, like I keep seeing these, I love these, Facebook memories are really funny because of course you go back 13, 14 years and you're just looking at some of the stuff. You're like, oh, I said that. Cool. Let's delete that. So there's no record of that. I never see that again. It's like we grow up, we grow wiser, right? But along the way, I see things that I've shared. Like Lee Boyce is a very good friend of mine, right? And I've been reading Lee Boyce on T Nation since I started in the industry 13 and a half years ago. And along the way, I had him on the podcast. We became friends. I've hung out with him at conferences. He's one of my best friends in the industry just through everything. And he's now going to speak at my conference in September. The third time we've done the conference, third time he'll speak there, right? Great human being. And I see that I shared a tweet of his and it repopulated to Facebook. And this would have been probably 2014 or somewhere before. So I just grabbed a screenshot and I sent it to him. And he responds, he's like, I said that. It's like, yeah, what he said was irrelevant, but the point was like, hey, listen, I've been sharing your stuff. I've been sharing Adam Bornstein stuff for God since very early in my career. And I met him in 2017, a very sort of like very brief way. He was a speaker at Luca Hocevar's event that I went to in Seattle, and didn't make there's the goal was not to make this great impression on everybody. The goal is not to make, I want to make friends with all the speakers, because I think the best part of it is actually to meet the people who are just like you, the other attendees, the people who are on the same journey as you. And I'm going to come back to that. But Luca reintroduced me to Adam much later on. Adam had started following me maybe a couple of years ago, and Adam was starting to promote his book, You Can't Screw This Up. It's a wonderful book. I actually cannot recommend it enough for coaches or enthusiasts, especially for the psychology of your nutrition. It's brilliant, right? And Adam has done nutrition for LeBron James, Arnold Schwarzenegger for many years. And Adam is also the editor of Arnold Schwarzenegger's email newsletter, Arnold's Pump Up. So Adam reconnected with me and wanted me to help promote his book. But here I am. I've been sharing his stuff on my Instagram, on my Facebook for many, many years. I've been consuming his stuff. I've got his previous book. And so I helped share and push the book, and then turn around that I was able to get him in as a speaker at an event that I speak at, Raise the Bar, which was in
Mhm.
Dallas this past year, which was great. But also Adam turned around and asked me and Luke each to contribute something, a workout, just a little write-up to Arnold's newsletter that they put out. So I've been featured in Arnold's newsletter. So I didn't plan all that and I didn't ask for any of those things. And that's just one example among many. So if you keep showing up, I'm doing a book. It's actually right up here. It's Mental The great mental models, it's the third one,
Parish.
systems. Yeah, Parrish's stuff. Shane Parrish stuff
Yeah.
is great. So systems and mathematics. It sounds very, very tech and boring, but it talks about what are the mental models as a compound effect, but it talks about the compound effect of relationships. And I didn't even think about it this way, but it's so true. So if you just continuously show up and you support and you're giving, and books like Joe Polish's What's in It for Them, or even Dale Carnegie's classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, talks about these basic principles, right? You make it about the other person. In a world that seems egocentric and self-serving, and people like that, right? And everybody feels good. And one of the most fulfilling things is to share, support, create opportunities for other people. I saw your event that you did last year. And despite the fact that I had my own competing event and that I wasn't able to make the trip myself, because you actually did ask me to be involved at one point, I just couldn't swing it because I had so much else going on. But I'm still sharing it on my media because I wanted people to see it. A bunch of friends of mine were speaking, and you and I had not met in person up to that point either. We just
Mhm.
connected through social media. And it was the easiest thing for me to do. It didn't take anything away from me. And I think a lot of people get really stuck in the what's in it for me mode. And I think if you reframe it as in what's in it for the other person, and if you scale that across a lot of interactions, and if you approach it with you give without any expectation of a specific result you get in return for that specific action. If you apply that to sharing something on social media, writing an article, creating a podcast episode, whatever, anything you do, if you take that attitude and you just multiply it across months and years of effort, actions, and interactions, then good things happen. And I've benefited from a tremendous amount of luck, but that luck's also the product of being in the rooms, literally, metaphorically. And over time, I just try to also look at it through the lens, and this is a powerful one. When if you understand someone else's value system, what they want, what they aspire to, and you also understand someone's time boundaries and capacity to engage with things, right? If I'm introducing Molly Galbraith to someone, it's a little bit different than if I'm introducing, one of the attendees at an event to another attendee, right? Molly is very, very successful and she's very giving, but she's also very clear on where her focus is and her boundaries. And she doesn't have, like, I can't just text her up and be like, hey, put these 3 people on your podcast. Luca, I'm like, here, this is something you need to know. Boom, get him on the podcast. And Luca will like fire up, the guest on the podcast because Luca's just
Mhm.
wired that way. But if you understand someone's value system and their time boundaries, then you can uniquely create in introductions where it becomes 1 + 1 = 3. Everybody benefits more than the amount they're the time. And this is really important because sometimes what happens is on a number of occasions, people have tried to reciprocate by introducing me to someone. And one of the challenges is usually in those cases, they don't understand. They do it because of the principle of reciprocity, but not necessarily because they've stopped to think about what are my value systems and where are my time boundaries. And I've ended up in situations where I've gotten an introduction to someone who either it's I try to be giving and I try to be about a mindset, but sometimes there's just the interaction or anything that would come from it would be a fairly significant take of my time, and there wouldn't be a lot of like give or value. And again, I try not to be transactional. I think that's really important. But we have to guard our time, and we have to have like appropriate boundaries around what we can and can't do. And so I actually try to deflect people trying to create many introductions for me. I would rather be the one who like figures it out along the way. Does that make sense? I know that's sort of weird, but again, I'm actually much more interested in just sharing and supporting other people and seeing them happy and seeing them fulfilled and seeing them getting great opportunities out of it. And as the network effect of the number of people that I know and I have contact with grows, and because of the powerful connections that I have established through the publications I write for and the events that I appear at and whatnot, then you get bigger and bigger people in the industry who've benefited from the things that I've done for them. All of us, and I don't cash in favors, or it's bloody rare if I do. But if I on the rare occasions ask for something, I usually get the favor I'm looking for. But even then, if I'm asking for something of someone, I usually still make sure that the other person comes out on the other end with something very valuable, something very beneficial. So it never really feels like a take. And if you do that, then people are more than happy to help you out.
I love it. And while there's a lot to unpack here, one thing that you said that really caught my eye, I don't know if you did this on purpose, maybe you read it recently, but the book Give and Take. Because I literally wrote down, I said, when I think about that book, there's a person in between the giver and the taker, basically the matcher. And you literally said that. And you just try to match your opportunities and to the right person. And I was like, whoa, I don't know if he meant this and said it on purpose, but there was that
No,
moment.
I've read Adam Grant's book, Give and Take, and I think it's a very good book. Adam's stuff, I've read a lot of stuff, and I think that there are a certain type of author that tends to write stuff that it's more designed to reach a lot of people and masses. But I'll give you another example, because when I think of this sort of thing, Matcher, I think of connectors, and of course Malcolm Gladwell wrote that. Now I both really like Gladwell's books, Outliers and The Tipping Point, but there's actually some very major errors and mistaken interpretations of research. The 10,000 hour rule, for example, which comes into Outliers, he fundamentally misunderstands it, misrepresents it, to which the original author, Anders Ericsson, of the research has even sort of like contradicted. But anyway, but these books sell really well, right?
Mhm.
But I think Adam Grant did a really wonderful job of explaining that phenomena in Give and Take. It's not one of my like seminal books, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, but I think it does a really good job of explaining what's going on there. And one of the basic messages is, in the short run, people who are more wired to take seem to benefit, but in the long run, people who are wired to give are the people who come out on top. It's a book that probably could have been an essay. It's like
Mhm.
what's his name? David Epstein's Range. Really
Yeah, good book.
long-winded book.
Good book.
Uh, I
Mhm.
think I think he has an excellent topic, excellent concept, but what he explains in that book can be easily explained in an article, and it didn't need a very drawn out, long-winded book.
Mhm.
I'm a hard ass
Yeah.
about this.
No, I like it. You know, there recently was this talk about being New York nice, where like New Yorkers will tell you how it is, where sometimes other people will be like, no, it's okay, but New Yorkers will be like, no, you messed up. You know, like, and I think what someone like you has is not just the opinion, but the expertise and the experience too, based off of not just the books that you've read, the authors that you've had conversations with, the all of those experiences combined. You it's not just opinion anymore. It starts to be real world experience where you take, and you say, well, Adam Grant, who wrote this book in 2000, call it 11 or 12, Adam Grant then might have had the audience that he had then, and it worked for them. But what you've seen again is that in certain instances he tends to go for that mile wide, but maybe an inch deep. Whereas you, as a specialist, and by the way, I wrote this down too. Your categories are author, coach, speaker, presenter, podcast host, record savant, cat whisperer. I put that in there last. The podcast host is one thing, but then also hosting events and planning for events, and you have to sell all of these things. You're not a mile wide. No. You're 10 miles deep in all of these categories, and that's what has made you successful. And I don't want to just stop there, but that's I think the the generalist sells a lot of books, but the specialist creates a lot of impact. And when I think of you, I think of in those categories, like I mean, just a specialist to the nth degree.
I still think so. There are people who do the kind of things that, I mean, you do a lot of these things. You host an event, you have a podcast. And I don't know the depth of how much you've written over the years. And I think of, again, Luca Hosfar is a good example of this, but there are many others in the industry who somehow we have the capacity to do all these. I actually don't recommend this to other fitness professionals. By the way, are our listeners more enthusiasts or coaches? It's valuable to frame everything through a bit of mix.
I like the question. Yeah.
Do you have more of one or the other?
It's probably down the middle. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'd say that the people that listen all the way through tend to be my clients.
Mm.
But the people that I wish could listen all the way through was trainers. I think that the attention span of the younger generation is, yeah, going for clicks and for likes and for um, maybe even certifications right now within the industry is like a focus, whereas people going into that, a mile wide, an inch deep concept, a lot of the trainers necessarily today are not necessarily seeing that, yeah, you have to put in internships, you have to put in shadowing or mentorships, you have to put in the work that you and I did, 12, 14, in my case, 2001, the work that we have done behind the scenes to get to where we are now. But here I am, sound like a cranky old man. But I think the concept remains. The audience, for the audience that I typically speak to, is, I don't want to say more of an Adam Grant audience, but it
Mm,
is. Now, the people that
that's fine.
I help at my exorbitant hourly rate, those people that I serve in my gym, right? Those people are very different than the people that listen to the podcast.
Well, we'll try to make sure there's something valuable for everybody. There's something in there that's kind of fun. So you and I did come from a different generation. I mean, I'm also a late entrant into the industry, right? So I'm 46. So I grew up, I'm a Gen Xer, right? And we hear lots of, oh, millennials and iGen are this negative shit. And then boomers, oh, boomer, but like everything bad. It's like, okay, there are differences in generations, generational attitudes, but there's differences in the environments we grew up in. Gen X sort of like gets a pass, but no one wants to fuck with us because of just the way we grew up. I grew up in a rural community in northern Newfoundland on the eastern coast of Canada. And when I was a teenager, I mean, my dad was like reasonable about stuff, but most of the kids I went to school with who were like preteen, have their own chainsaws, their own shotguns. Some of them have dirt bikes. We all had skidoos, snowmobiles that we like would go around in the winter. We would drive to school on a snowmobile. There were roads. I mean, and you get the whole, like, it was 2 miles each way uphill, and you had to carry a junk of wood. That was my dad's growing up. We didn't have to carry junks of wood for the wood fire there, but it was a different world. And like, this is going to sound horrifying, but like, okay, well, we were free range kids. We went out, we're running around the woods. Obviously, there's no cell phones or anything like that. Mom and dad weren't too stressed out about where we were. We played sports. We were in the woods with kids with chainsaws and shotguns. And I mean, there's always bad shit, but there were no, I don't remember any major incidents in this town. And this is the part that's going to sound bad. There was a known pedophile in this town of 500 people, and all the kids ran around freely. And it's not to say that parents were totally irresponsible. It's just a different generation. And I think people had a better understanding of risk versus reward. And I think that generation, people that grew up fairly well balanced without a lot of anxiety versus the book, The Coddling of the American Mind, talks about this stuff. And I don't want to really get in too deep into it, but we're seeing higher rates of anxiety due to a bunch of reasons, one of which is the exposure to social media. It's one piece of a very big puzzle. A more polarized political climate than ever was. There's a whole bunch of pieces to it, but there's an argument you can't really like just let kids run free anymore. You see a 6-year-old around the neighborhood by themselves, and someone's calling the police, right? And next, the kids are being taken away, or at least that's the fear. So different worlds. But anyway, I digress. I think that with the younger generation of people, coaches coming in the industry, we both will want to get them to understand the value of time, effort, hard work, but we also have to soften up a little bit on anything that sounds like gatekeeping or pushing, hey, you have to pay your dues a little too hard. This generation has access to accelerators like social media in a way that we didn't when we were in our career early, right? We were subjected to the more traditional gatekeepers of the industry. In order to have developed a well-known brand and become a visible educator in the industry, you pretty much had to go through one of the major fitness publications or be part of a fairly big organization of some kind. So you had to be a writer for T Nation. The generation of T Nation writers for a very long time were like just gods of education and authority in the industry. It's not as potent as it once was, but it's still pretty substantial. It's why I saw a lot of value in. I was invited to write for them 5 years ago, and I've contributed for 5 years. And I love T Nation. I read it for years. I'm reading Tony Gentilcore and Martin Rooney and Dean Somerset and Ben Bruno and on and on and on list, right? And then there's bodybuilding.com. Lane Norton, he got a lot of his foothold through bodybuilding.com, a ton of exposure there. There's other people who came through, did a lot of writing for Livestrong or Men's Health, Muscle and Fitness magazine. And every once in a while there'd be someone else who just like really ground through. There was also the old affiliate network. So you get people who got really involved in that. Like Mark Young, friend of mine in Canada, really great guy. Mark was part of those things. There's a lot of other people who were involved in that stuff, email marketing stuff, where people would share each other's stuff. But again, that's very fairly gate kept. So I mean, the rare examples of people who built things on their own, I think Nick Shaw and Mike Israetel from Renaissance Periodization. You know, to the best of my knowledge, they were never featured on any of these other gatekeepers. They just built their own thing and just did it so damn well that it became huge. But almost everybody else of that generation, in some way, shape, or form, were platformed by and approved by the gatekeepers. It's kind of like the way the music industry used to be. This is a really good analogy for this. In the past, if you were going to make it as a musical artist, you would have either had to bid on TV, radio, right? Or touring. And all of those things, the touring was, of course, I mean, you playing local clubs is where you get your start, but major tours, that of course is a byproduct of having successful music videos and being played on the radio. And then the radio and music videos were all controlled by the record companies. So those were the traditional gatekeepers. Now you have all these SoundCloud rappers, and it's not to say that stuff's any good, but you have Justin Bieber getting discovered. I mean, talent is still talent, but I think he was putting up YouTube videos, if I'm not mistaken, was discovered through there. And now he's one of the biggest recording artists in the world. And or you get American Idol or the shows that are, the same sort of thing. But more and more bands, they can self-produce their own music. They can produce their own, like, upload it digitally, so there's less barriers to people getting to consume more stuff. And so, yes, Apple Music and Spotify don't necessarily pay these artists very well, but they have a lot more ways and through social media to promote, grow, get attention than in the way that it used to be. And so the fitness industry is the same. So what's the difference in the fitness industry? Well, social media, right? The ability for someone to learn the skill of social media. You get people who are really clever at video-based stuff now is sort of the real potential for growth. And I know a lot of coaches who are younger, and I think a lot of them are actually quite skilled. Some of them are useless muppets. There's always going to be a little bit of both, right? There's this guy, a guy that I know shared a video kind of like contradict. And I'm always careful about these sort of things that call you other people out. Sometimes it's good, sometimes this shit gets out of hand. But I guess there's a guy, I don't want to say names, but he uses a really, really creepy voice and he'll share biomechanics stuff. And I would say at least half of what I would call the biomechanics video-based stuff on social media is rubbish. It's people fundamentally misunderstanding things or just doing weird takes on stuff that's like, you can tell this person actually hasn't actually ever coached anybody, right? They don't have the experience. They're just saying sensational things for social media. And again, of course, that generates clicks. We know that works.
Mhm.
And so I see this called out and I'm like, sweet mother of God, this guy's really annoying and his advice is terrible. And I've seen him pop up a couple other places. And I go, look, and the guy's got 700,000 followers on Instagram. And here's the thing. I think that coaches who just spend all their time complaining about influencers and social media and all this sort of stuff, and are just bitter and angry, and I know a lot of them, and they're very resentful because they feel that they're entitled to what they think comes with that level of quote status, because they're thinking in terms of status. They want that. They want the public speaking things. They want the invitations, everything. And my argument is that doesn't change anything. It won't make them go away. You need to get in the ring. You need to get in the arena. You need to consistently contribute. You need to do things that supports and platforms other people instead of waiting around for people to just revere you, which is what they want. It requires effort. And if you're frustrated because you have people sharing things that you disagree with, you don't like, well, take up more space on social media. Do a better job of it. Build a brand, build a following, which I think is a very powerful thing for coaches, especially ethical, experienced, knowledgeable coaches, right? Who've done great work, who have worked with real people. And if you can translate that into skill and savvy with social media, that grows and gets in front of more people. It takes up space from, and one of the names that I will use is the Eddie Abuz of this world. I'll just yelling. If you're not familiar with Eddie, you can go search it. It's going to be ridiculous. But he's just this angry ex-pro bodybuilder who just walks through grocery store aisles and swears that breakfast cereal is terrible. Now, guess what? We probably shouldn't be eating a ton of breakfast cereal, right? It's not particularly nutritious, but there are complex sociodemographic aspects to, people consuming cereals. So it's just not as simple saying, don't eat this shit, which is what he does. And it still comes down to the balance of everything you're consuming. Lots of lean sources of protein, lots of complex carbs, fruits, vegetables, etc. Yes, you have the carnivore cultists doing their thing on social media. You have the vegan types been doing their thing for a long time. Okay, cool, whatever. Like I'm just not interested in fighting with them, but the best for most people is probably somewhere in the middle. And what we now have is we now have people have figured out that it's very easy to build status and rapid following by walking through a grocery store aisle, complaining about whatever particular food they cherry pick. And oatmeal and spinach are two of the common ones, which is just absurd. It's really ridiculous. And as much as that may frustrate us, I'm sorry, but if all you're doing is complaining about that and burning emotional energy on your frustration about the people that you're trying to silence and control, which ideologically and fundamentally, I disagree with silencing people you disagree with. I don't like that. So, but I do believe in just do a better job, like share better information, help more people, and get good at getting in front of eyeballs. And as much as I don't like the way that these people say it, you can at least learn things from the tactics and the approach to social media, but do it in an ethical way that maintains integrity instead of doing it the way that the grifters and the charlatans are doing it. And I get as frustrated with the whiners in our industry who complain about this stuff as I do with the charlatans and the grifters, because it's not changing anything.
You know, the integrity that if someone was just looking and just heard that clip, right? I would say that listening to a 13 and a half year industry veteran, again, with all the accolades that you have from author to podcast host uh, to coach to speaker to event host, all of these things. At the end of the day, when you have integrity, both in the words that you speak and the actions that you take, they match, right, at a very high level. And scientifically, you're following scientific biomechanically sound. It does sound overly simple, and I don't mean to boil it down to how you've been able to be a success in the industry, but when you put it that way, it's like, yeah, it is sort of simple. Show up, right? Be present, be positive, and people will see themselves out.
The the message is a great analogy between what I try to say to coaches about what's required to build a brand and what the client and the enthusiast needs to do to lose the weight, build the muscle, build metabolic health. It's not going to be done quickly. It can't be magically, whipped up with a pill or a potion. We're always fighting that battle. It does require consistent, sustainable effort applied over a long period of time. And if you can do it in such a way that you actually find you're not suffering through, but you're actually build a lifestyle that feels better and that you learn to enjoy it. And it feels better than the way you used to live. If the media creation, if I'm writing something, I feel very fulfilled by the writing process. And it's really nice to see something get published. It feels great. I enjoy the conversations I get to have on podcasts with friends. It's a really great way to build connection, build relationship, and support other people like we started with. Getting flown to speak at an event, that feels awesome. That's cool. It's also a byproduct of having done all the other things for a really long time. I think there are coaches, because again, I get asked a lot, hey, can I come speak at your event? And I love the fact that people aspire to it, but I think people invert the relationship. I think they think that, well, if I get on the podcast and if I get on the speaking stage, that will, excuse me, that will give me status, right? Is the way I think they think. But you get the invitations to appear in all these venues because you've put your head down, you've built the library of resources that help other people, you built your media, you built brand, you built relationships. And when I look for speakers for my event, I have a few hundred amazing people I would love to be able to platform. But I probably at the end of the day have 13 to 14 spaces in an event. You relate to this. And each one of those people, that name, I know they have to put butts in seats, and I have to know that A, they're a strong public speaker, that their name draws, and people look at the individual, but the entire event and go, wow, I can't miss this, right? And with my event and the lineup speakers this year and last year, people are going, wow, that's incredible, right? With Luca's event, that's going to come up in October 10th through 12th. And I'm speaking at it. He's going to announce the lineup soon. I already know most of the lineups names. It's wow. Okay. It's really, really wow. And I love the fact that coaches aspire to get on that stage. But what I try to tell coaches is you still have to do all the other things. And that stage may end up being the result. Right. And for the enthusiast who, looks at, ideal body types, it's like, okay, it's going to take some time. But can we make this process something that you enjoy, you feel really good about, so that way you wouldn't want to go back to the way you were before? Right. And that's one of my favorite things about anything I write. If I'm writing training articles for T Nation, if I'm writing short, witty little things for social media that I'm hoping won't be too fluffy, but are resonant enough that people will share it, that will bring more eyes. And it generates, and this is a response I love. And I got a couple of these when I woke up this morning. I see yesterday's post. It's like, I needed this today. And if I get that response to something, then I know I've done something good, because it kept someone in the game. It kept someone from quitting. It kept them on track a little bit from falling off. And for the people who complain about social media and won't step in to help people, you get those kind of responses and people are just plugged into what you're doing. It may feel surface level at times, but if it's something that someone leans to for a little bit of an extra boost on a particular day, it's a really good feeling. And you do this long enough over time, people just like what you do. The cool thing is they reach out. You don't have to sell hard at all. Sometimes they will just periodically reach out. You can't anticipate, but I get more than enough inquiries about my online coaching and in-person coaching where the only thing I ever will post to quote sell an event that I'm involved in, because I'm supporting the people who are hosting it, or it's my own event, right? I don't want to lose money on that. Or 4 times a year, I do an intake for my women's online strength training group. And that one, I will, do some posting and I'll let people know that the intake is open, and then usually gets a great response. And then then I close it up and we go back about everything. And then I just post and interact and answer questions. And it's not sell, sell, sell. In fact, I think a lot of people spend way too much time asking and selling. And I think they need to spend more time giving, supporting, and being of service. And it's tough for a newer coach who has an urgency to make money, because again, we all have to pay our bills and the world feels like it's getting more expensive all the time. And it goes back to what I was saying about the millennial, the iGen sort of attitude. They're in more of a rush to have an impact. And that can be seen as a good thing or a bad thing. But I think it's a good thing, because I think it means that they're less willing to tolerate bullshit, right? Of just pay your dues, bide your time, your time will come. I think that they're more willing and interested and capable of making a more immediate impact in a positive way. I think that we can all feel like we're in a rush sometimes. I get that. I understand that. But I respect the fact that if someone's intentions are pure, I respect the fact that they are in a hurry. And I'm more inclined, as someone who's been around the industry a bit longer, to try to take the more senior established authorities in the industry and say, let's not gatekeep what these people can do and timelines they can do it on. Let's actually provide resources and support so that way they are able to do these things, get into the online space. This is one of the contentious ones. You get people will say, oh, yeah, you have to earn the right to train online. You need to coach in person for a minimum of 5 years, is one of the ones I often hear. Well, is that full-time or part-time, right? How many hours? It's arbitrary. And I know it's metaphorical. And we know that in order to be a great online coach, you absolutely need to be practiced and skilled and experienced in in-person coaching. But if we gatekeep it and we say to the new coach, now you have to wait 5 years, they're going to tune you out. They're going to go over to the grifter who sells the online mentorship. And there are good and there's bad in this, but I know some bad ones. And they're going to teach the brand new coach who hasn't spent much time on the floor. They're going to teach them hard selling tactics and a whole bunch of other things. They're going to take a bunch of their money to give them something that may or may not even prepare them to do this well. And then they're going to be the outlet. It's like the it's like the coach who is so evidence-based that when a new client comes in and sits down in front of them and says, hey, I don't want to get too muscular. I just want to tone up. Okay. Which is something I hear all the time. And that coach can't stop themselves but saying, well, actually, tone is not a thing. And they begin to lecture and condescend this person in front of them because they can't curb the urge to do it, to be right. And what happens? Well, you've got this person who probably is thinking about this for a long time and is probably at least intimidated, little, insecure about admitting, hey, I don't know this. I don't know what to do. I'm seeking help. They're sitting in front of you because they're looking for help. And they find this idea and environment intimidating. And you have this great opportunity to bond with them and to say, listen, I'm here to help. Okay. I'm excited to have you here. But instead, you immediately go into this mini lecture and you tell them why they're wrong about something. You've now broken the opportunity to build trust. And it's very likely that that person won't come back. And if we're lucky, after a while, they may come back and the next person they get in front of is also evidence-based and ethical. If we're unlucky, they'll either never come back, say a bad experience, or they'll come back, but then they end up in front of someone who doesn't have your ethics, who will just take their money and tell them what they want to hear. Now, people get really hung up on this idea that, oh, tone is not a thing. Listen, motherfucker, tone is absolutely a thing. We goddamn know what they mean, right? We know that they want to get stronger. We know that they want to look leaner. We know that they don't want to get too muscular, but they want to build a little bit of muscle. They want to lose some fat. We know what they need. So shove the urge to be technically and pedantically correct into your back pocket, sit on it, shut the fuck up, listen, and be supportive and empathetic. And then along the way, because does it really matter? No. Along the way, you'll be able to teach them how losing body fat works and nutrition, and you'll be able to teach them how muscle building works, and you'll be able to make them feel comfortable with the fact that, hey, you can train heavy and hard to near failure consistently over time. And unless you are a genetic like super responder, or you're using performance enhancing drugs, or you do it over a really long time scale and you're eating consistently to grow, then chances are you're not going to be able to put on more muscle than you'd be happy with. And along the way, they may even realize like, hey, I really like this. I feel good. This looks good. And the number on the scale that they equated with their happiness, which never works that way, suddenly they realize that, wait a second, I look better, but I weigh more than I thought I would. And that can be a tricky emotional thing. So I think a lot of this is just to say to coaches, we have to get kind of off the high horse a little bit about some of the attitudes, the holier than thou, sanctimonious bullshit that we get on with. And we have to have empathy never lose empathy for the person who's in front of us who's struggling. And don't forget that they do not have the curse of knowledge that we have coming in. Okay. And for the newer coach who's enthusiastic and excited and wants to make an impact, we can either gatekeep them and they'll go away, or we can actually support them, but understand that the world is different, especially a post-COVID world. Coaches are going to come in and they are going to learn training as a hybrid model. They are like, that's the reality. They're going to start learning online. They're going to be involved in social media much earlier than you and I started in our careers. And I was on Facebook early, but Instagram came much, much later. And we have a choice there. And I'm hoping that anybody listening, if you even have an inkling of the gatekeeping side of things, is to soften that up a little bit. Keep an open mind. Maybe it's not going to change your attitudes from day one, but don't dig your heels in the sand on this. Say, no, I'm right. It's like Principal Skinner in The Simpsons, right? No, it's the children who are wrong. No, look in the mirror.
I can't remember who said this, but maybe it was Thomas Plummer. But I remember we were talking, and talk about branding, talk about building a business, you talk about impact. And I think the one thing he said for me that resonated was, some people are very good at building a brand. Some people are very good at building a business. Don't confuse the two. And when you talk about the younger generation, and I think that's you hit a very good nail on the head when you said that the gatekeeping in the industry, and I think I know I've been guilty of this in the past, but I think the communicating that they're not the same. right? There are people with 100,000 followers that don't necessarily have the world's greatest business. And there are people that have 1,000 followers that have, and I'll give you an example. I have a trainer at my gym in New York. He trains, I mean, talk about A-list. And I asked him, I go, how last month go? And he's like, yeah, I did 380 sessions. Oh my God, 380 sessions. And he's like, some of these are two and three people at a time. So it's a little misleading. It's probably like, 130, 140. And I'm like, what's your going rate? And he's like, well, for a 2-person, it's 250, and then 300 for a 3-person. I look up his Instagram, 400 followers. And I was like, this is so funny because if you ask, a new coach, hey, do you want to make $20,000 a month, or do you want 200,000 followers? And you probably get this deer in headlights look. And it's not that there's this dichotomy of you can't have both, right? But I think the impact today and creating impact, if you're a neighborhood gym, right, you can have 70 to 80 people that come to your gym, and they can be devout, loyal members, and they will speak highly of, and they will be welcoming, and they will be headphones free, right? And they'll go into the gym and, hey, good to see you, George, and so on, right? That can change the lives of those 70 to 80 people, and that can have a massive impact. And on the flip side, there are people that have 200, 300, 400,000 followers. Again, that might not have the business that right? We just can't assume. But I wanted to go back to a second, because we're going down a training realm, or a training rabbit hole. You have a training program for women only. You have written multiple articles. Why choose the women only? Did you feel like it's something that you had a lot of experience with? Did you feel like it was something that you could delegate the best? Why did that speak to you?
Sometimes there's not necessarily a big reason. So it started out as having a partner. So a
Got it.
client of mine, a former client of mine, and she's a young coach, very, very smart, very well educated, great with her clientele. She sought me out as a mentor and a coach. And this is a few years ago. And it's probably like in between the COVID stuff, right? Gyms are opening, closing in here in Canada. And she was great. She's super strong. And so along the way, her company that she used to work for, they ultimately did go bankrupt. They were dealing with some insolvency issues, but they just weren't really on top of their stuff. And there's some uncertainty whether her even location would stay open. So we decided, hey, let's bring you over here. Let's leave this gym. Let's get you set up with your own business. You're going to make more money. You'll be more stable and secure, right? And so she did that, thrived. She's killing it. She's absolutely doing great. So along the way, I just got this idea because I know that other people in the industry do these group cohort-based programs. And I said, hey, what do you think about this idea? We do a really great job. But she liked it. And she was great on the infrastructure back end of stuff. And of course, I have the larger media presence. And she works almost exclusively with women. So it was just an easier thing to do. And that's really it. I also think that women on average are slightly better fitness consumers than men. A lot of men consume fitness, but on the whole, women are better. And it's not that I necessarily thought about this, but over time, despite the fact that I write for T Nation, I write for Generation Iron and Muscle Fitness and what have you, my social media following is almost 2/3 women. The stuff just seems to resonate with them. That's great. I find that they're really awesome and engaged on average. And I've never sought out the hardcore bodybuilding bro type of clientele. I don't coach powerlifters. I don't coach bodybuilding competitors or bikini competitors. I've always worked with general population. Now, my in-person and my online clientele is probably over the years 50-50, right? And I like working with everybody. But the women's group, it just seemed like it made sense. Now, my partner in this, Bailey, she's ultimately left and gone and doing her own thing. She's building a community of one-on-one online in-person stuff. Just in so that way it's hers authentically, and she's earned that right, and she's done great. But she left me with the program because ultimately she knew that most of the people coming into it were coming in through my media, and so I had considered shutting it down. The women in the group were emphatic about it; they love it, and so I realized that because now I'm doing every aspect of it and on all the back end, I really enjoy it. It was a lot of work to learn everything that Bailey did so well, but I'm enjoying it more than ever. I'm fulfilled. And obviously now I keep everything myself instead of splitting it. So it's become a very valuable vehicle. My last intake was 78 women. and they're in the Facebook group and they're loving it. They're supporting each other. They're posting up their videos, etc. And so I've been doubling down. Excuse me. I've been doubling down on figuring out ways that I can do a better job with scaling it, growing it, which makes it lucrative. So I coach full-time in person. I still love it. That's really important to me. But I need more and more as I get older to be in a position where if I need to, I can step away from the in-person for little pieces of time. My dad's in the hospital right now. Everything's going to be fine. But, if something changes, I got to get on a plane. Okay. And if something ends up where I need to go back for a little bit longer and spend time, at home with my folks, then it will be much, much easier if I have a strong enough online business and vehicle that, I don't want to step away from my in-person. I still think it's valuable. And I think a lot of coaches make the mistake of trying to get away from in-person and go exclusively online. And that could work for some people, right? And I've got a lot of friends who do really well with it. But I think a lot of coaches are misled to think that's a panacea. I think it's a valuable idea to have a strong foothold in both, but I want to make sure I grow that so that way, if I ever need to, I have the flexibility and the livelihood buffer that I could do that sort of thing. My folks are not getting young. I just spent a couple of months ago, I spent a few days in Vegas with them, brought them down. They'd never been to Vegas before. They had a really great time. I'm really,
At the
really
Real
glad.
Coaches Seminar?
Yes, right afterwards. They flew in the second day of it. I met up with them in the morning. We spent 4 days. We went to like the Beatles Love, a Cirque du Soleil show at the Mirage.
So
And
fun.
they, a couple of their friends came down with them. They drove out to, I didn't go, but they drove out to the Hoover Dam and saw it. They thought it was great. We walked all over the strip, saw the Bellagio Conservatory and the water show, which they thought was really cool. They'd never been, so it was a really special thing for them. And the fact that they got to spend the time with me, we went to dinners and whatnot, so they loved it. And anyway, I'm glad the timing was good, as it turns out. So, and this stuff is also, for the coaches listening and even the enthusiasts, you hear a lot of, I hope, love for our industry and a genuine desire to see other coaches do well. Right? It doesn't take anything away from me for someone else to thrive. It's why I do the conference here locally in Edmonton. Ostensibly my competition for in-person clientele, and make them better at the skills of business, brand, media side of stuff so that they get to stay in an industry that we all love and a career that we all love that's fulfilling and earn a livelihood doing it, because there is no pension plan for us. Okay. And you always have to wonder, where's the next client coming from? We all think that. No matter how good we get, we all still wonder that, right? That never goes away. And if I can keep people in the industry and be fulfilled and feel really good about my contributions to something, because I started over at 32 years of age, left a job that wasn't really anything meaningful. And I, come out of, some years of up and down stuff in my life. I won't get into specifics, but this gave me a life I couldn't have dreamed of, and opportunities that still to this day I look and blow my mind. I can't believe it. And I'm lucky. I'm lucky to get to do what I do. And I really do want to share that with more people. And it's cool. I never would have envisioned the growth of the social media side of stuff or the reach through the publications to where I can actually do stuff that will change more lives at scale, right? For free, for different scales of pay, and earn a livelihood doing it. And if status comes with that in the industry, okay, I'm fine with that. I don't like looking at it through the lens of status. I like looking at it through the lens of authority, right? Credibility and authority, impact. And if I can show other coaches who are skilled, who have integrity, the way to follow that path and to be able to stay in this long term, then that's a really good feeling. And I'll know I'll have done something good.
I love it.
And for any of the enthusiasts listening, I hope that some of the resources that I've created or will continue to create are valuable to you, or some of the other coaches that I have supported, encouraged, platformed along the way will contribute something positive to your life, or give you things that you can share with the people in your world. So that way you have the social currency of these resources to go to someone in your world and say, hey, I've got something that's going to help you. And that's actually one of the keys of knowing how to build media, especially social media.
Oh, I love it. And you talk about the impact and feeling fulfilled for you. As you look ahead, do you have like a 1, to 5 year plan? Are you one of those people, or are you like do you have like an everyday planner? How do you
No,
because you
no.
seem to me, Mr. Productivity, you seem to me very productive, and like you
Mm,
got everything written out in the sand. But is that not the case?
Not at all.
No?
It's funny. So this is in a presentation that I did at Raise the Bar. I mentioned how like I never knew how to answer the question of what's your long-term goal, what's your 5-year plan? No clue. I think it's very, very, very wise to have a clear idea of where you want to be and what you want to accomplish. But I don't think I've really gotten that clarity. And what I realized along the way is my mission. First of all, I have a very, very strong, solid livelihood with my in-person business, and the outline has grown. So I'm playing from a position of strength there, which has allowed me the bandwidth to write, share, create, and build media. And as that's built and taken on a life of its own, I realized, wait a second, this is a very powerful vehicle. So the goal has been personal brand development, right? And with personal brand development, greater reach, greater influence, greater relationships, then it opens the doors to as of yet unknown options and opportunities that, as they present, I can decide through my value system, is this a good opportunity? Do I have the time? Do I have the ability to do this? Does this help me? And the opportunities that I've gotten in the last 3 to 5 years, certainly the last 2 to 3 years, couldn't have imagined. So if I had 5 years ago set out any plans or goals for 5 years, I've absolutely like exponentially achieved things that I could never have even like asked for. So we'll see what the next 3 to 5 years have in store, which will be fun. I still think I have to have a good value framework on knowing where time is well spent. And I think that I probably do too many things compared to what most people should do. I think it's all consuming. And part of my problem is that I enjoy this more than I do sitting down and watching television. So, when people, I did a presentation on this, they'll be aired right away for the Recovery and Sleep Summit. My friend Nick Lamb, great, great dude. If you guys want to watch it, you can watch it live for free. And I know it's going to be aired 2 weekends. The first weekend of May, which by the time this comes out, it might already be done. And then it's a weekend later in May. It's on my media. If you want to message me, I'll give you the links and you can watch it live for free. Talk about like, the idea of these boundaries. And it's like, I think a lot of people come into the industry and they believe that the key to success is having the clear boundaries and like the 9 to 5 life or whatever that some of the industry like superstars have. But they're not where they are because of those boundaries. I mean, along the way, boundaries became really important, but they're there because of like hard work, dedication, commitment, tireless hours, sacrifice to where they had to put in boundaries because of the opportunities that came their way, that they had to just get more and more discerning and say no to more and more lucrative opportunities to be able to make sure that they were saying yes to the things that were very much on mission. If you guys want to get into this philosophy, read the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown. It's the best treatment of this, right? It's about getting clear on what's essential to you and how to say no to things that don't align with it. That's what the book's about. So no, I haven't sat down and thought, hey, where do I want to be? But what I would like to do is be like to grow, reach and influence. And yes, numbers on social media are both a vanity metric in a sense, but they're also a metric of the number of people that you have reach and impact with, right? So it's a good thing, right? If you're using it ethically. Um, Hopefully there'll be continued opportunities to speak in front of other coaches. I enjoy that. I think that's fun. Um, I'll continue to write for the publications I write for, and hopefully there'll be some new ones. I'll have a new one to announce what I believe will be this month, which I'm excited about. I keep that under my hat until it's official. And we'll see what happens is kind of my attitude.
I love it. I love it. Well, you've certainly taken advantage of every opportunity that you've created, and every, good footstep that you've put in front of the other, not just for yourself, but for other people. And I think your reputation within the industry precedes itself. I think a lot of people who maybe from the outside in can learn a lot just by the way that you conduct yourself within the industry. Always speaking highly, always providing opportunities for other people to learn, and being candid about the opportunities that you've had, that you've taken, the lessons that you've had and that you've learned, Just networking 101. I remember the fitness summit, one of the first times somebody was just like, just making friends. And I went for a business opportunity thinking, oh, it's all about business. And now
Mm.
it's, that was 2014. So it was 10 years ago. And these are people that I still text on a daily basis, but some of them
Yep.
who had the 5,000 friend limit, like on Facebook, now have, the collective group of all those presenters have probably 50 million followers. And it's just,
Mm.
and you're one of those, people that's just had a stratospheric rise. And, it's fun and admirable to be associated with somebody who, again, has that integrity. And I'm really hoping that as many West Coast folks and that can get to your event, and or regular, it's not that far, right? How far is what's the how do you get to you?
So Edmonton, I mean, I'm what am I? I'm, an hour and a half flight, if that, from Seattle. I'm less than
Okay,
like an hour flight from Vancouver in Western Canada. I'm trying to remember, I think it's like a 3 hour flight from Vegas even, right? So it's not even that bad. It's about 3.5 hours from Toronto.
okay,
And you get direct flights in from a place like Minneapolis, Denver,
there you go, got it.
Toronto. So if you're coming in from a place like New York, you're going to bounce off of a place like Toronto
Hmm.
or Minneapolis. And anyway, we'll put on a great event. We've got a killer lineup. If anybody wants to know more, just shoot me a message. Instagram, Andrew Coates Fitness. I'm easy to get there. Connect with me on Facebook, whatever. There's one more thing I was going to say that, like, Andy Morgan, who's a friend who I met at the Kansas City Fitness Summit
Hmm.
2017, and he was there again 2018, 2019. Andy flew in from Japan to come attend my event. Okay, so it was worthwhile, and he got to connect with a whole bunch of his good people, and it was great to see him. So if it's worth your guys' while, I hope you'll check it out. Meanwhile, anybody who's found this episode through my media, make sure you're following Kevin. Okay, and Kevin has a great event too that you're doing it probably next year is the plan.
Probably next year. Yeah,
Okay, great,
this year focus on the brick and mortar here in St. Louis. So
excellent,
yeah,
good.
yeah. So, well, thank you. And as always, the wisdom you're just breaking the surface. If you're hearing now, just wait until you start listening to his podcast. And if you can get to his event in Edmonton, that'll be awesome. So, thank you again, and until next time.